Going live in just a moment. Always takes a second with YouTube. I think it's close. Headphones on. And I seem to be live. Just make sure. Okay. Welcome to Just Curious Media. This is Let's Talk Movies, and I'm Jason Connell. On the show today, it's kind of a special treat, an archived interview from the past. So in 2012, I met actor John Kapelos. You may know him from movies like 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Roxanne, so many more. I met him at the Newport Beach Film Festival, and I invited him to an LA film premiere just 2 nights later, which was May 3rd, 2012. Now, the film premiere I invited him to, my very own documentary, Glow, the story of the gorgeous ladies of wrestling. Now, it's a great doc, very proud of it. But it also went on to become the inspiration for the Netflix series that was really popular until the pandemic kind of shut it down, unfortunately. Rest in peace. But that evening in particular, it was part of my very own Los Angeles United Film Festival. And that screening was at the Los Feliz 3 Cinema. So many great screenings there. And we had a sellout crowd. I mean, it was crazy. We had a Q&A that had 20 plus Glow Girls on stage with myself and Sal Rodriguez, who was helping me host the event. It was a spectacle, an epic night that had everybody leave the festival and go down to the Dresden down the street, the famous bar that was in the classic film Swingers. And it was just an amazing night, a great way to wrap up the festival and also get to know John Kapelos a little bit. Very cool. Loved his time there. And so this led to me reconnecting with him in 2014 and interviewing John. And I went and met him at his LA office, which was the same building as the famous Wiltern Theater venue in Los Angeles. And we discussed a lot of classic 80s movies he was in. Now, the interview has not been altered. It's intact. It even has movie clips as transitions in there, which I loved it at the time. I don't do that now, but hey, this was 2012. It was a different time. Podcasting was different, but it worked really well. We use, movie clips to get in and out of what he's talking about. I think it's really fun. So I didn't want to touch that. And this, unlike the first recording, which I'll talk about in a second, the first archived recording, I actually had a Zoom recorder this time and 2 mics. So the quality was a little bit better. And a lot of fun. I mean, I was a very inexperienced but ambitious interviewer at that point in time. And you'll even hear me referencing the United Films podcast. Now, what is the United Films podcast, you may ask? Well, it had 2 episodes total. It had this one with John Kapelos, and it had one with Dabney Coleman, which I released last week on Let's Talk Movies. And that was it. And the reason for that was because I ended the United Film Festivals in 2014 after 12 glorious years of doing the festival. I ran it in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, London, and my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma. 12 years, long time to run a film festival, but great memories. But it ended, and so with it, the United Films podcast. And so I really wanted to dust off these 2 archived interviews and give them a second life. And I did so last week with Dabney Coleman. That's on Let's Talk Movies. You can check it out. Tons of fun. And now you'll have John Kapelos. And that's the end of the United Films archived interviews. In regards to the one that came out last week, which you can already hear, Dabney Coleman, I was visiting the Vista website and I pulled the year. It says 2011, and that's when we honored him with handprints and we played on Golden Pond and gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. But then I thought that doesn't feel right. So I went back through my own archives and I was right. My suspicions were right. It was actually April 26th, 2012. So we honored him in 2012. And then my interview with Dabney Coleman was in 2014, much like John Kapelos. So lastly, those watching on YouTube Live, unfortunately, you're going to have to download the podcast version to hear my interview with John Kapelos. I didn't have the means to insert it here. So this is more of a setup just for you guys. And then come over, download it. It's well worth your time. I promise you, he's fantastic. So please enjoy my conversation with John Kapelos. So thank you so much for listening. And please be sure to excuse me. So let me start again. Thank you so much for listening. And please be sure to subscribe to the Let's Talk Movies podcast, as well as the Let's Talk Movies YouTube live channel. You can also really help us by giving the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. And for all you listeners that enjoy sharing your thoughts, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcast, send us a direct message, or post a comment on our Let's Talk Movies social media platforms. We also highly recommend checking out our other podcast and visiting justcuriousmedia.com.